Oh, forgot to turn my car off. My legs are itchy. Hello. I'm excited for these next couple of chapters. I feel like something big is about to happen. Y'all, I feel like we're like really making progress through this book. Like we're about halfway through. Thank you. I'm still repping Loki, even though I did not like him in the book I just read. He's still repping him. 47%. Yeah, we're about halfway through. Woohoo. Go us.
My sister is the
Oh my god. Go away. Sorry guys, that was my brother. He's taking my dog out for me. Will I do this for y'all? Alright. Let's get it. Chapter 20. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm refreshing myself on where we are. Okay. So... Okay. So the first maiden. Alright. Let's get it. Chapter 20. After years of destruction that had decimated entire cities, leaving countrysides and villages in ruins, and ending hundreds of thousands of lives, the world was on the brink of chaos when, on the eve of the Battle of Broken Bones, Jalaris Solis of Vodina Isles gathered his forces outside the city of Pompeii, the last Atlantean stronghold. Oh, my dad's home. I cleared my throat, wildly uncomfortable. Not only was that the longest sentence in the history of man, I always hated reading out loud, but especially when I had Hawk as an audience. Hold on, y'all. My grandpa's breaking down. I can't be reading, so I'm just gonna roll up the windows. And then I'll roll them back down whenever they're gone. But especially when I had Hawk as an audience. I hadn't looked at him since I'd started reading. Still, I was almost positive that he was doing everything in his power to remain alert and not be bored into falling asleep while standing. Which sat at the foot of the Scotus? Which sat at the foot of the Scotus mountain. Scotus, Princess Analia interrupted. Oh, look at me like an idiot. It's pronounced like Scotis. You know how it's pronounced, maiden. Do so correctly. My fingers tightened around the leather binding. The history of the War of Two Kings and the Kingdom of Solace was well over 1,000 pages, and every week I was forced to read several chapters during my sessions with the priestess. I'd probably read the entire tome out aloud over a dozen times, and I swore that each time the priestess changed the way Scotus was pronounced. I didn't say that. Instead, I took a deep, long breath and tried to ignore the almost overwhelming urge to throw the book at her face. It would do some damage. Probably break her nose. The image of her clasping her bloodied face brought forth a disturbing amount of glee. I smothered a yawn as I concentrated on the text. Having been up most of the night thinking about what the Duchess had told me, I'd gotten little sleep. And like I told Victor, I'd gotten few answers. But it had been a relief to learn that what was happening wasn't something that my mind was conjuring up. My abilities were maturing, whatever that meant. The Duchess hadn't wanted to discuss it further, so while I knew that what was happening was somewhat normal, I was also left with the knowledge that the First Maiden had done something that had put her on a path to interact with a Dark One, who'd killed her. That wasn't exactly reassuring. Neither was the knowledge that the First Maiden was somehow connected to the Duke. Was that why he treated me as he did? Perhaps it had nothing to do with my mother. I drew in a shallow breath. which sat at the foot of the Scotus Mountains. It's actually pronounced Skotos. Okay, we need to make up our mind on this, came the interruption from the corner of the room. My eyes widened behind the veil as I looked over to Hawk. His face was all but devoid of expression. I glanced at the priestess, who sat across from me on an equally hard, cushionless wooden stool. I had no idea how old the priestess was. Her face was bare of makeup and smooth, but I thought that she might be at the end of her 3rd decade of life. There were no gray strands in her brown hair that was sharply pulled back and held in a bun at the nape of her neck, causing her face to remind me of the hawks that I sometimes saw perched up high in the Queen's gardens. A shapeless red gown covered her from just under her neck, leaving only her hands visible. I'd never seen the woman smile, and she was definitely not smiling now as she looked over her shoulder at Hawk. "And how would you know?" Derision? Whatever, dripped from her tone like acid. "My family originates from the farmlands not too far from Pompeii, before the area was destroyed and became the wastelands we know today," he explained. "My family and others from that area have always pronounced the mountain range as the maiden first said." He paused. The language and accent of those from the far west can be difficult for some to master. The maiden, however, appears to not fall into that group. Damn. I was confident that my eyes were about to pop out of my face in response to the obvious insult. I bit down on my lip to stop myself from grinning. Priestess Analia's already stiff shoulders jerked back as she stared at Hawk. I could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. "I did not realize I asked for your thoughts," she spoke, tone as withering as her stare. "My apologies." He bowed his head in submission, but it was the poorest attempt at it because his amber eyes all but danced with amusement. She nodded. "Apology. I just didn't want the maiden to sound uneducated if any discussion were to arise about the Skotos Mountains," he tacked on. "Oh my gods. But I will remain quiet from here on out," Hawk said. "Please continue, maiden. You have such a lovely reading voice that even I find myself enthralled with the history of Solace." I wanted to laugh. It was building in my throat, threatening to burst free, but I couldn't let it. My grip loosened on the edges of the book, which sat at the foot of the Skotos Mountains. The gods had finally chosen a side. When the priestess said nothing, I continued. "Nyktos, the king of the gods, and his son Theon, the god of war, appeared before Jalara and his army. Having grown distrustful of the Atlantean people and their unnatural thirst for blood and power, they sought to aid in ending the cruelty and oppression that had reaped these lands under the rule of Atlantia." I took a breath. Never mind. Jalara Solis and his army were brave, but Nyktos in his wisdom saw that they could not defeat the Atlanteans, who had risen to godlike strength through the bloodletting of innocents. Bloodletting of innocence. And they take children, innocents, for their right, and the children are never seen again. Sounds a little familiar. Okay. Y'all. Okay. They killed hundreds of thousands over the time of their reign. Bloodletting is a gentle description of what they actually did. They bit people. Priestess Analia elaborated, and when I looked up at her, there was a strange gleam in her dark brown eyes. Drank their blood and became drunk with power, with strength and near immortality. Sounds a lot like the Ascended. And those they didn't kill became the pestilence we now know as the Craven. That is who our beloved king and queen bravely took a stance against and were prepared to die to overthrow. I nodded. Her fingers were turning pink from how tightly she'd balled her hands when they were rested in her lap. Continue. That just solidified my theory. That No. Tell me that doesn't sound like the Ascended. They take children who are seen as innocent for their right, never to be seen again or heard from, and then they have all these Ascended who are near immortal. The math is mathing, y'all. Just for the wrong side. The math is mathing. I didn't dare look at Hawk. Unwilling to see the failure of Jalara of Vodina Isles, Nykthos gave the gods first blessing, sharing with Jalara and his army the blood of the gods. I shuddered. That was also another gentle term for drinking the blood of the gods. Emboldened with the strength and power, Jalara of Vodina Isles and his army were able to defeat the Atlanteans during the Battle of Broken Bones, therefore ending the reign of the corrupt and wretched kingdom. Uh-oh. I started to turn the page, knowing the next chapter dealt with the ascension of the queen and the building of the first rise. Why? The priestess demanded. Confused, I looked over at her. Why what? Why did you just shudder when you read the part about the blessing? I hadn't realized my action had been so noticeable. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't irritate the priestess and end with her running back to the Duke. You seem disturbed, she pointed out, her tone softening. I knew better than to trust that. What is it about the blessing that would affect you so? I'm not disturbed. The blessing is an honor. But you shuddered, she persisted. Unless you find the act of the blessing pleasurable, am I not to assume that it disturbs you? Pleasurable? My face flamed red hot, and I was grateful for the veil. It's just that the blessing seems to be similar to how the Atlanteans became so powerful. They drank the blood of the innocent, and the Ascended drink the blood of the gods. How dare you compare the Ascension to what the Atlanteans have done? The priestess moved quickly, leaning forward and gripping my chin between her fingers. It is not the same thing. Perhaps you've grown fond of the cane, and you purposely She just exposed the Duke. Y'all. Oh, it's over. Oh, it's over. Perhaps you've grown fond of the cane, and you purposely strive to disappoint not only me, but also the Duke. The moment her skin touched mine, I locked down my senses. I didn't want to know if she felt pain or anything else. I didn't say that it was, I said. Seeing Hawk step forward, I swallowed. Just that it reminded me of the fact that you think of those two things in the same thought greatly concerns me, maiden. The Atlanteans took what was not given. During the ascension, the blood is offered freely by the gods. Her grip tightened, bordering on painful, and my gift stretched against my skin, almost as if it wanted to be used. That is not something that I should have to explain to the future of the kingdom, to the legacy of the Ascended. For as long as I could remember, everyone said that, even Victor, and it grated on my nerves and sat like a boulder on my shoulders. The future of the entire kingdom rests on me being given to the gods upon my 19th birthday. Her already thin lips became almost non-existent. What would happen if I didn't ascend? I demanded, thinking of the first maiden. It hadn't sounded like she'd ascended, and everyone was still there. How would that stop the others from ascending? Would the gods refuse to give their blood so freely? I sucked in a sharp gasp as the priestess cocked her hand back. It wouldn't be the first time she had smacked me, but this time the stinging blow didn't land. Hawk had moved so fast. No! Hawk had moved so fast that I hadn't seen him leave the corner, but now he had the priestess's wrist in his grasp. Remove your... Remove your fingers from the maiden's chin. Now. Priestess Analia's eyes had grown wide as she stared up at Hawk. How dare you touch me? How dare you lay Oh my god! Okay, sorry. How dare you lay a single finger on the maiden? His jaw flexed as he glared down at the woman. Perhaps I was not clear enough for you. Remove your hand from the maiden, or I will act upon your attempt to harm her, and I can assure you, me touching you will be the least of your concerns. I might have stopped breathing as I watched them. No one had ever intervened during one of the priestess's tirades. Tirades? Sorry, I don't know. I know how to say that, but it's glitching up here. Tawny couldn't. If she did, she would face worse, and I'd never expect nor want that. Rylan had often turned in the other direction, as did Hans. Even Victor had never been so bold. He'd usually find a way to interrupt, stop the situation from escalating, but I'd been slapped on more than one occasion in front of him, and there was nothing he could do. But Hawk now stood between us, clearly prepared to follow through on his threat. And while I knew I would most likely pay for this later, as would he, I wanted to jump up and hug him. Not because he had protected me. I'd been slapped harder by stray branches while walking through Wisher's Grove. There was a far pettier reason. Seeing the priestess's usual smugness vanish under the weight of shock and witnessing the way her mouth hung open and how her cheeks molted with red was almost as satisfying as throwing the book in her face. Vibrating with rage, she let go of my chin, and I leaned back. Hawk released her wrist, but he remained there. Her chest rose and fell under the gown as she placed both hands flat on her legs. She turned her head to me. The mere fact that you would even speak such a thing shows that you have no respect for the honor bestowed upon you. But when you go to the gods, you'll be treated with as much respect as you have shown today. What does that mean? I asked. This session is over, she answered instead, rising from her seat. I have too much to do with the riot only 2 days away. I have no time to spend with someone as unworthy as you. I saw Hawk's eyes narrow, and I stood, placing the book on the stool as I spoke before Hawk could. I'm ready to return to my chambers, I said to him, and then nodded to the priestess. Good day. She didn't respond, and I started for the door, relieved when Hawk fell into step behind me. I waited until we were halfway across the banquet hall before speaking. You shouldn't have done that, I told him. I should have allowed her to hit you? In what world would that have been acceptable? In a world where you end up being punished for something that wouldn't even have hurt. Oh, I don't care if she hits like a baby mouse. This world is fucked up if anyone finds that acceptable. Eyes widening, I stopped and looked at him. His eyes were like shards of amber, his jaw just as hard. Is it worth losing your position over and being ostracized for? He glared down at me. If you even have to ask that question, then you don't know me at all. No! I hardly know you at all, I whispered, irritated by the sting his words left behind. Well, now you know that I will never stand by and watch someone hit you or any person for no reason other than they feel they can, he shot back. I started to tell him that he was being ridiculous and was missing the point, but he wasn't being ridiculous. This world we lived in was messed up, and the gods knew that wasn't the first time I'd thought that. But it had never hit me with such clarity before. Silent, I turned from him and started walking. He was right beside me. Several moments passed. It's not like I'm okay with how she treats me. It took everything in me not to throw the book at her. I wish you had. I almost laughed. If I had, she would have reported me. She'll probably report you. To the Duke? Let her, he shrugged. I can't imagine that he's okay with her striking the maiden. I snorted. You don't know the Duke. What do you mean? He would probably applaud her, I said. They share a lack of control when it comes to their tempers. He hits you, Hawk stated. Is that what she meant when she said that you'd grown fond of the cane? He grabbed my arm, turning me to face him. Yo, it's happening! It's happening! Has he used a cane on you? The disbelief and anger filling those golden eyes sent a wave of nausea through me. Oh, gods. Realizing what I'd basically just admitted, I felt the blood drain from my face and then rapidly fled back in. I pulled my arm and he let go. I didn't say that. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw flexing. What were you saying? It's just that the Duke is more likely to punish you than he is the priestess. I have no idea what she meant by the cane. I continued in a rush. She sometimes says things that make no sense. Hawk glanced down at me, his lashes lowered. I must have misread what you said then. I nodded, relieved. Yes, I just don't want you to get in trouble. And what about you? I'll be fine, I was quick to say as I started walking again, aware of the darting glances passing servants sent our way. The Duke will just give me a lecture, make it a lesson, but I'll face nothing, he said. And I wasn't so sure about that. Is she always like that? I sighed. Yes. The priestess seems like a... He paused, and I glanced over at him. His lips were pursed. A bitch. I don't say that often, but I say it now, proudly. Nearly choking on my laugh, I looked away. She's something, and she's always disappointed in my commitment to being the maiden. Exactly how are you supposed to prove you are, he asked. Better yet, what are you supposed to be committed to? Okay, but he knows, right? He knows. He knows. I almost jumped on him in that moment and wrapped my arms around him. I didn't because it would be grossly inappropriate. Instead, I gave him a sedate nod. I'm not quite sure. It's not like I'm trying to run away or escape my ascension. Would you? Funny question, I muttered, my heart still thumping from what I'd almost exposed. It was a serious one. My heart lurched in my chest as I stopped in the narrow, short hall and approached one of the windows that faced the courtyard. I stared up at Hawk, and everything about him said that it was, in fact, a genuine inquiry. Sorry, y'all, I'm forgetting how to pronounce basic words. I can't believe you'd ask that. Why? He came to stand behind me. Because I couldn't do that, I told him. I wouldn't. It seems to me that this honor that has been bestowed upon you comes with very few benefits. You're not allowed to show your face or travel anywhere outside the castle grounds. You didn't even seem all that surprised when the priestess moved to strike you. That leads me to believe it's something fairly common, he said. His brows dark slashes above his eyes. You are not allowed to speak to most, and you are not to be spoken to. You're caged in your room most of the day, your freedom restricted. All the rights others have are privileges for you, rewards that seem impossible for you to earn. I opened my mouth, but I didn't know what to say. He'd pointed out all that I didn't have and made it so painfully clear. I looked away. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you did try to escape this honor, he finished. Would you stop me if I did? I asked. Would Victor? I frowned. Not even sure I wanted to know why he'd ask that. But I answered honestly. I know Victor cares about me. He's like I imagine my father. He's like I imagine my father would have been if he were still alive. And I'm like Victor's daughter, who never got to take a breath. But he would stop me. Hawk said nothing. So, would you? I repeated. I think I would be too curious to find out exactly how you plan to escape to stop you. I coughed out a short laugh. You know, I actually believe that. Will she report you to the Duke? He asked after a moment. Pressure settled on my chest as I looked at him. He was staring out the window. Why would you ask? Will she? He asked instead. Probably not, I said, lying all too easily. The priestess probably went straight to the Duke. She's too busy with the rite. Everyone is, as the Duke would be. So I might get lucky and at least have a delay between now and when I would inevitably be summoned. Hopefully that meant that Hawk would also get lucky. If he were removed from his post, it was unlikely that I would ever see him again. The sadness that thought brought forth meant that it was far past time to change the subject. I've never been to a rite. And you've never snuck into one? I dipped my chin. I'm offended that you'd even suggest such a thing. He chuckled. How bizarre that I could think that of you, who has a history of misbehaving, would do such a thing. I grinned at that. You haven't missed much, to be honest. There's a lot of talking, a bunch of tears, and too much drinking. His gaze slid to mine. It's after the rite where things get interesting. You know how it is. I don't know, I reminded him, even though I had an idea of what he spoke of. Tawny had told me that once the ritual of the rite was completed and the mistresses and stewards took the new ladies and lords in wait, and the priests left with the third daughters and sons, the celebration changed. It became more frantic and raw, or at least that was what I'd interpreted from Tawny. But it seemed too bizarre to imagine the Ascended being involved in anything like that. They were always so cold. But you know how easy it is to be yourself when you wear a mask. His voice was low as his gaze held mine. How anything you want becomes achievable when you can pretend that no one knows who you are. Warmth infused my cheeks. Yes, I did know that, and how kind of him to remind me. You shouldn't bring that up. His head tilted. No one is close enough to overhear. That doesn't matter. We shouldn't talk about that. Ever? I started to say yes, but something stopped me. I pulled my gaze from his. Outside the window, the violet-hued butterfly bushes stirred softly in the breeze. Hawk was quiet for several moments before asking. "Would you like to go back to your room?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not particularly. Would you like to go out there instead? You think it would be safe?" "Between you and me, I would think so." The corners of my lips lifted. I liked that he'd included me, acknowledging that I could hold my own. I used to love the courtyard. It was the one place where, I don't know, my mind was quiet and I could just be. I didn't think or worry about anything. I found it so very peaceful. But not anymore. "No," I whispered. "Not anymore. It's strange how no one speaks of Rylan or Melissa. It's almost as if they never existed." "Sometimes remembering those who died means facing your own mortality," he said. "Do you think the Ascended are uncomfortable with the idea of death?" "Even them," he answered. "They may be godlike, but they can be killed. They can die." Neither of us spoke for several minutes, as servants and others passed behind us. Several ladies in wait had stopped and pretended to take in the view of the garden while talking about the rite, but I knew they were lingering near where we stood, not because of the stunning flowers and lush greenery, or because it was so rare for me to be seen, but because of the beautiful man who stood beside me. He seemed unaware of them, and even though I kept my gaze forward, I could feel his stare every couple of moments. Eventually, one of the mistresses came along, shooing the ladies away, and we were left alone once more. "Are you excited about attending the rite?" "I'm curious," I admitted. The rite was only 2 days away. "I'm curious to see you." "Shut the fuck up." My lips parted in a soft inhale. I didn't dare look at him. If I did, I feared I'd do something incredibly stupid. Something that the first maiden could have done that had made the Duchess feel that she was unworthy. "You'll be unveiled." "Yes." I also wouldn't be expected to wear the color white. It would almost be like going to the Red Pearl because I would be able to blend in and no one would know who I was, what I was. "But I will be masked." "I prefer that version of you," he said. "The masked version of myself?" I asked, guessing that he was thinking of our time at the Red Pearl. "Honest?" His voice sounded closer, and when I took another deep breath, the scent of leather and pine surrounded me. "I prefer the version of you that wears no mask or veil." I opened my mouth. Oh my god, sorry, but I opened my mouth, but as was becoming commonplace where Hawk was concerned, I didn't know what to say. It felt like I should discourage such statements, but those words couldn't come to the surface either, just as they hadn't before. So I did the only thing I could think of. I changed the subject. "I remember you said your father was a farmer." I cleared my throat. "Do you have any other siblings? Any lords in wait in the family? A sister? Or..." I rambled on. "There's only Ian for me. I only have one brother. I'm excited to see him again. I miss him." Hawk was quiet for so long that I had to look to make sure he was still there and still breathing. He was. He stared down at me, his amber eyes cool. "I had a brother." "Had?" My senses stretched out and I didn't even have a chance to control them. I opened myself up and I locked my legs to stop myself from taking a step back. I didn't feel anything strange, but I felt Hawk's anguish, the bitterly cold pain that pelted my skin. It was sharper. This was where his pain stemmed from. He'd lost a brother. I reacted without thought to what he would think or the fact that we were not alone. It was an uncontrollable urge, as if the gift itself had a hold of me. I touched just his hand with mine and squeezed it in hopes that it would be construed as a gesture of sympathy. "I'm sorry," I said, and I thought of warm beaches and salty air. Those thoughts quickly changed to how I'd felt when Hawk had kissed me. The taut lines of Hawk's expression smoothed out as he stared out the window. He blinked, not once but twice. Lifting my fingers from his, I clasped my hands together, hoping that he hadn't realized that I'd done something. He stood there, though, as if he'd been struck immobile. I lifted my brows. "Are you okay?" He blinked again. This time he laughed softly. "Yes, I just had the strangest feeling." "Is that so?" I watched him closely. Hawk nodded as he rubbed the palm of his hand over his chest. I don't even know how to explain it. Now I was starting to worry that I'd somehow done something other than relieve his pain. What, I wasn't sure, but if my gifts were evolving, anything was possible. I reached out with my senses once more, and all I had felt in return was warmth. Is it a bad feeling? Should we find a healer? No, not at all. Hawk's laugh was stronger then, less uncertain. His eyes, now a warm honey, met mine. My brother is not dead, by the way, so no need for sympathy. Now it was... Is his brother... Wait. His brother's not dead? His brother's not dead? Is his brother Prince Castile? Is it? Now it was my turn to blink repeatedly. Oh? I just thought... I trailed off. Are you sure you wouldn't like to visit the garden? Thinking it was far past time for me to lock myself away before I did yet another reckless thing, I shook my head. I think I would like to go back to my room now. He hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Neither of us spoke as we made our way. Apparently, Hawk was trying to figure out why he felt happier and lighter, and I was left wondering what exactly had happened to his brother to cause that kind of reaction, especially if his brother was still alive. Oh my god. I'm gonna stretch my legs out, but I can't. Chapter 21. Okay. Are we I know something you don't. Are we reading to chapter 22 or are we reading to chapter 23? Like, are we reading through 22 or just we stop at 22? Stop at 22 or stop at 23? I know. Through 22. Gotcha. Okay. Chapter 21. It took less than 24 hours for me to, yet again, do something utterly reckless. This time, however, I may end up regretting it. Of all the ways I thought I might die, it had never occurred to me that it could happen while borrowing a book from the... There's that fucking word again. Athenaeum. There were far more dangerous things I'd done in my 18 years of life. Times where I would have been more likely to die in the process. Utter heaps of examples where even I had been a bit surprised that I'd walked away with my limbs and life intact. But here I was, one wrong step away from plummeting to my death, clutching the supposed diary of one Miss Willa Collins, the book that Lauren and Defina had been talking about. Obviously, the book would most definitely be the type of reading material Priestess Analia would oh my god! Expressly forbid! Jesus! And if I were caught with it in my possession, it would be yet another reason for her to believe that I wasn't respectful of my duty as the maiden. So of course I had to read it. I'd been so very bored all day. I'd already read every book Tawny had snuck me at least 3 times, and I couldn't bring myself to read another too familiar page even one more time. She had yet again been commandeered by the Duchess and the Mistress. I'm gonna take a break because I'm stuttering way too much right now. Way too much. Jeez Louise. It's like my mind is reading ahead while I'm trying to read through the sentence that I'm on, and it just gets jumbled up. Okay. So, I had to take another day of staring uninterrupted, except for my training with Victor, at 4 stone walls. And the longer I stayed in my room with nothing to occupy my mind, the more I thought about what Hawk had said about all the rights that had been stripped away from me. It wasn't like I didn't already know that, but it wasn't something that others appeared to even acknowledge. Maybe it was because they were with me constantly, so everything had become the norm. But to Hawk, who was new, none of this was normal. And that was what led me to travel unaccompanied through Wisher's Grove to the Athenaeum while Hawk stood outside my chamber door, thinking I was inside. Victor was Well, I had no idea where he was. I had a feeling, based on how tired and sad his eyes had looked this morning, that he'd been called upon the night before to take care of one of the cursed and hadn't invited me. I also had a feeling that he wasn't going to involve me going forward, which irritated me. Of course, I planned to discuss that with him the first chance I got. I wouldn't be cut out when I could help people, and he would just have to deal with it. But right now, I needed to focus on not dying, or worse yet, getting caught. Cold night air whipped around me as I stood plastered against the stone wall, praying to any god that the foot-wide ledge I stood on wouldn't cave under my weight. I doubted when it was built that they had taken into consideration that, at some point, an entirely stupid maiden would find herself standing on it. How had this gone so terribly wrong? Sneaking into the Athenaeum hadn't been hard. With my shapeless black cloak and my trusty mask in place and my face hidden under the hood, I doubted anyone on the streets of Macedonia had been able to tell if I was male or female, let alone the maiden, as I hurried down the alley toward the back entrance of the library. Moving along the grid of narrow halls and staircases without being seen was easy, too. I knew how to be like a ghost when needed, quiet and still. My problem started when I found the leather-bound journal of Miss Collins. Instead of leaving and going back to the castle like I knew I should, I ducked inside an empty room. I had been going stir-crazy in that room and had dreaded going back, and the thickly cushioned settees called to me. The stocked liquor cabinet, something I found odd to discover in a library, confused me, however. But I'd sat by the large windows overlooking the city below and cracked open the worn book. My cheeks had been scalded by the end of the first page, having discovered what occurs when someone kisses one not on the mouth or on the breast like Hawk had done before he knew who I was, but someplace far more intimate. I couldn't stop reading, practically devouring the cream-hued pages. Miss Willa Collins lived a very interesting life with many, many other fascinating people. I had gotten to the part where she spoke of her brief fling with the king, which I could not even begin to picture, nor did I want to, when I heard voices outside the room. One in particular I'd never thought to hear in the Athenaeum, the Duke's. Hearing his voice meant that I'd been so caught up in the diary I hadn't even realized the sun had set. I hadn't been summoned to meet with him the night before or today. With the preparations for the rite, I'd been given a temporary reprieve, and I assumed Hawk had as well, since he was still my guard. But that reprieve would come to a swift end if the Duke discovered me. Fuck, I lost my spot. Which was why I was now perched on a ledge outside what turned out to be the Duke's personal room in the Athenaeum. The only grace I'd been given was that the window I'd climbed out of wasn't the one facing the street, but rather the one blocked by Wisher's Grove. Only the Hawks could see me or witness my fall. The sound of ice clinking against glass caused me to swallow a groan. He'd already been in the room for at least 30 minutes, and I was betting that he was on his second glass of whiskey. I had no idea what he was doing. With the rite kicking off in just hours, I imagined he was busy meeting with the new ladies and lords-in-wait and the parents who would be giving their third sons and daughters to the temples. But no, he was here, drinking whiskey by himself. A knock on the door sounded. I closed my eyes, lightly banging the back of my head against the wall. Company? He was going to have visitors? Maybe the gods had been watching me this whole time, and this was yet another punishment. "Come in," he called out, and I heard the door clicking shut a few moments later. "You're late." Oh dear, I recognized that cold, flat tone. The Duke was not pleased. "My apologies, Your Grace. I came as soon as I could," came the response. It was a male voice, one I didn't immediately recognize, which meant it could be any number of people. Ascended lords, stewards, merchants, guards. "Not soon enough," the Duke replied, and I cringed for whoever was surely on the receiving end of a very disapproving stare. "I hope you have something for me. If so, that would go a long way to restoring my faith in you." "I do, Your Grace. It took a while. As you know, the man was not talkative. No, they never are once you get them out of the public eye where they can't cause a spectacle with their words," the Duke commented. "I'm guessing you had to be extremely convincing to get him to talk." "Yes." There was a rough laugh, and then, he's not an Atlantean. That has been confirmed." "Shame," the Duke said, and I frowned. Why would that be bad news? "I've learned his name. Lev Baron. Baron." "Baron?" "The first son of Alexander and Maggie Baron. He had 2 brothers. The second died of an illness before his rite, and the third was given to the temples 3 years ago. He was not a known person of interest, and his behavior at the assembly wasn't expected. They were talking about the dissenter, the one who'd thrown the craven hand while the Duke and Duchess had spoken to the people after the attack. You've investigated the family? The Duke asked. Yes. The father is deceased. The mother lives alone in the lower ward. She was useful in getting him to talk. The Duke chuckled, and the sound turned my stomach. What else have you learned? I don't believe he was very connected within the community of dissenters. He claims that he has never met the Dark One, nor believes him to be within the city. A wealth of relief rose and spread through me even as the wind lifted the edges of my cloak. And you believed him? The Duke asked. I gave him good reason not to lie, the man said. The man, who I assumed was one of the guards, answered. I thought about the man's mother. Had she been one of the reasons for him opening up? If so, the knowledge sat heavy in the pit of my stomach. Dissenters needed to be dealt with harshly, but I wasn't sure how I felt about family members being used to coerce information. And did he tell you anything about the claim he made? About the third sons and daughters? All he would say was that he knew the truth, that they weren't servicing the gods, and that everyone would soon learn that. He didn't say what he believed to be the truth. I turned my head toward the window, all but holding my breath. I would love to know what he thought was happening. No, Your Grace. The only additional information I could glean from him was how he came to be in possession of a craven's hand, he said, and that was, well, a good thing to know. Apparently, he took it off the body of one of the guards who had become infected and returned to the city. He helped the family put the guard down after he'd changed. Death with dignity, the Duke scoffed, and my eyes widened. He knew about that? About us? These bleeding hearts will be the death of the entire city one of these days. The statement was a wee bit excessive, but I hadn't considered that there may be dissenters in the network. Did he happen to tell you who was involved with putting down the newly turned craven? He asked. No, he would not. That is also a shame. I would love to know who didn't contact us and why. The Duke sighed as if that were the worst possible thing to remain unanswered. Do you have anything else to report? No, Your Grace. There wasn't an immediate response, but then the Duke asked, Does the dissenter still breathe? For now. Good. It sounded like he'd stood, and I hoped that meant he was leaving. Please, God, let that mean he's leaving. I think I will visit with him myself. My brows lifted. Now that surprised me. As you wish. There was a beat of silence. Will there be a trial that we need to prepare for? I almost laughed. Dissenters weren't given an actual trial. They were put on public display while their charges were leveled against them. Execution quickly followed. There will be no need after my visit with him, the Duke said, and my mouth dropped open. The meaning was clear. If there was no trial, that meant there'd be no public execution, and the only reason that would occur would be if the dissenter was already dead. That had happened before while they'd been imprisoned. Normally it was believed that they're to have been by their own hands or by an overzealous guard. But could it be that the Duke was meting out justice himself? Meting out? Jesus. The same ascended who I doubted had gotten a speck of blood on his hands since the War of Two Kings. I shouldn't be surprised by that. He had a cruel streak and viciousness within him a mile wide, but he always kept that well hidden under a mask of civility. I also shouldn't be bothered by the idea of the dissenter being killed without the farce of a trial. They supported the Dark One, and even if some of them hadn't engaged in the riots and bloodshed, their words alone had sown the seeds that had caused blood to spill on more than one occasion. But I was bothered by the idea of anyone being killed in a dark, dank cell at the hands of an Ascended who was barely better than an Atlantean. Finally, the door opened and closed, and there was nothing but silence. I waited, straining to hear any sound. I heard nothing, wondering why the Duke had decided to have this meeting here, and surprised by how aware of the network he was. I inched along the ledge toward the window, clutching the journal to my chest with numb fingers. I neared the window. There was a clicking sound from inside the room. I froze. Was that the door closing? Or was it locking? Oh my gods. If it had been locked, I would have to bust through it. Wait, the door could only be locked from the inside. Had someone else come into the room? Was it the Duke? There was no way he knew that I was out here, unless he could suddenly see through walls. Who else? Now, how the fuck did he know? How the fuck did he know? I'm on to you, Hawk. You still out there, princess? My lips parted as my eyes widened at the sound of his voice. Hawk. It was Hawk in that room. I couldn't believe it. Or have you fallen to your death? He continued. I briefly debated the merits of jumping. I really hope that's not the case, because I'm pretty positive that would reflect poorly on me, since I assumed you were in your room. A pause. Behaving, and not on a ledge, several dozen feet in the air, for reasons I can't even begin to fathom, but am dying to learn. Damn it, I whispered, looking around as if I could find another escape route, which was stupid. Unless I suddenly sprouted wings, the only exit point was through the window. A heartbeat later, Hawk stuck his head out and looked up at me. The soft glow of the lamp glanced off his cheekbone as he raised his brow. Hi? I squeaked. He stared at me for a moment. Get inside. I didn't move. With a sigh so heavy it should have rattled the walls, he extended his hand toward me. Now. You could say please, I muttered. His eyes narrowed. There are a whole lot of things I could say to you that you should be grateful I'm keeping to myself. Whatever, I grumbled. Move back. He waited, but when I didn't take his hand, he disappeared back into the room, grousing under his breath. If you fall, you're going to be in so much trouble. If I fall, I'll be dead. So I'm not quite sure how I'd also be in so much trouble. Poppy, he snapped, and I couldn't help it. I grinned. Had that shut the fuck up. Had that been the first time he'd called me that? I thought so as I carefully inched across the ledge. Gripping the upper windowsill, I ducked down. Hawk was standing by the settee, but the moment he spotted me, he moved incredibly fast. Startled, I jerked back, but I didn't fall. He had an arm around my waist. A second later, I was inside the room, my feet on solid ground and the journal stuck between his chest and mine. There was still a lot of full body contact. My stomach and legs were pressed against his, and when I drew in a breath, I could practically taste his dark spice and pine scent on my tongue. Before I could say a word, I reached up and fisted the back of my hood. Don't. I started. Too late. He yanked it down. A mask. This brings back old memories. His gaze roamed, flickering over the strands of hair that had escaped my braid and now fell against my cheeks. This, I can't. I can't. This, I cannot. I cannot do this. I flushed as I tried. This banter going back and forth, I can't. I flushed as I tried to pull away. He didn't let go. I understand you're probably upset. I understand you're probably upset. Probably, he laughed. All right, you're definitely upset, I amended. But I can explain. I sure hope so, because I have so many questions, he said, golden eyes glimmering as he stared into mine, starting with, how did you get out of your room, and ending with, why in the gods were you on the ledge? The last thing I wanted to tell him was the old servant's entrance. I tried to put space between us. You can let me go. I can, but I don't know if I should. You might do something even more reckless than climbing out onto a ledge that can't be more than a foot wide. My eyes narrowed. I didn't fall. As if that somehow makes this whole situation better. I didn't say that. I'm just pointing out that I had the situation completely under control. Hawk blinked, and then he laughed. He guffawed deeply, and shut the fuck up! Okay. Hold on, never mind. And the sound rumbled through me, eliciting a sharp wave of hot, tight shivers. Thankfully, he seemed unaware of the reaction. You had the situation under control. I hate to see what happens when you don't. I said nothing to that because I doubted whatever I would or could say would do me any favors, and neither did our proximity. Like on the rise, the way he held me against him reminded me of our time at the Red Pearl, and that was something I didn't need help remembering. It was hard to think clearly when he held me this close. I wiggled, trying to slip free, but it resulted in our lower bodies being more in contact. Hawk's arm tightened around me, and his hold felt like it had changed, as if he were no longer keeping me in place, but holding me, embracing me. My stomach dipped as I slowly lifted my gaze to his. He stared down at me, the lines around his mouth taut. As the silence stretched between us, I knew I should demand that he let me go. Better yet, I should make him. I knew how to escape a hold, but I didn't move. Not even when he lifted his other hand and placed his fingers just below the mask. Standing here, allowing this, was possibly the sweetest torture I'd ever put myself through. He hesitated, and I wondered if he was waiting to see what I'd do, what I would say. When I still did nothing, his eyes shifted to a fierce, burning amber. His fingers drifted from the mask and slowly traced the curve of my cheekbone. My skin hummed as his Shut the fuck up. As his stare followed the path that his fingertips took. He glided them down my face and over my parted lips. I sucked in a sharp breath, and my chest suddenly feeling too tight. His chin dipped, and my breath caught as he lowered his head. Every muscle in my body seemed to tense with a heady mix of panic and anticipation. There was intent in the way his lashes lowered, and how he leaned in. He was going to kiss me. My heartbeat danced as his lips glided across my cheek, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. I knew what I should do, but I didn't. Maybe Hawk had been right when he'd said how I could have anything I wanted when... Maybe Hawk was right when he'd said how I could have anything I wanted when, with a mask, I could pretend that no one knew who I was. He had to be, because my eyes closed and I didn't move. Hawk had been my first kiss, but if he kissed me now, this would be our real first kiss. He knew who I was now. He'd seen me unveiled. He knew, and I wanted this. Wanted him. Shut the fuck up. Chapter 22. My heart was pounding so hard as his fingers drifted to my chin. He tilted my head back, and I felt like I was falling. His mouth moved to my ear, and his warm breath sent hot tingles through me. Poppy, he murmured, the words sounding rough. Thick. Yes, I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. His fingers slid down my throat. I don't know what to do with my hands. How did you get out of the room without me seeing you? My eyes popped open. What? How did you leave your chambers? He repeated. It took me a moment to realize that he wasn't trying to kiss me. He was just trying to distract me. Feeling about 7 different kinds of foolish, I cursed under my breath and pulled at his hold. This time he let go. Face flaming, I stepped back. I retreated several steps, lowering the journal as I dragged in a deep breath. I was so incredibly stupid. Desperate to not let him see how close I'd come to letting him kiss me, or the fact that I thought he was going to, I lifted my chin. The rawness was still there, though, and I felt no relief. Maybe I walked right past you. No, you didn't, and I know you didn't climb out of a window. That would have been impossible, he replied. So how did you do it? Frustration spiked as I turned back to the window, welcoming the cool air drifting in. I was perhaps foolish enough to get caught, but I was not stupid enough to realize that I could get away with not telling him. There's an old servant's access to my chambers. My grip tightened on the journal. From there, I can reach the main floor without being seen. Interesting. Where does it empty out? Where does it empty out on the main floor? I snorted as I turned back to him. If you want to know that, you have to find out for yourself. He lifted a brow. All right. Holding his stare, I couldn't help but acknowledge that there still wasn't any relief. There was only disappointment that he hadn't kissed me. And if that was an indication of anything, it was that I needed to get control of myself. That's how you got out. That's how you got onto the rise without being seen, he stated, and I shrugged. I'm assuming Victor knows all about this. Did Rylan? Does it matter? He cocked his head. How many people know about this entrance? Why do you ask? I challenged. Hawk took a step toward me. Because it's a safety concern, Princess. In case you've forgotten, the Dark One wants you. A woman has already been killed, and there has already been one abduction attempt that we know of. Being able to move unseen through the castle directly to your chambers is the kind of knowledge he'd find valuable. A shiver crept across my shoulders. Some of the servants who've been at Castle Tierman for a long time know about it, but most don't. It's not a concern. The door locks from the inside. Someone would have to break down the door, and I'd be ready if that happened. I'm sure you would be, Hawk murmured. And I haven't forgotten what happened to Melissa or that someone tried to abduct me. You haven't? Then I guess you just didn't take any of that into consideration when you decided to go gallivanting through the city to the library. I didn't go gallivanting through anything. I went through Wisher's Grove and was on the street for less than a minute, I told him. I also had my cloak up and this mask on. No one could even see a single inch of my face. I wasn't worried about being snatched, but I also came prepared just in case. With your trusty little dagger, the dimple reappeared. Yes, with my trusty little dagger, I snapped, about 2 seconds away from throwing the thing in his face. Again. It hasn't failed me before. And that was how you escaped abduction the night Rylan was killed, he surmised. The man wasn't scared off by approaching guards. I exhaled noisily. There was no point in lying about this now. Yes, I cut him. More than once. He was wounded when he was called off. I hope he died. You are so violent, Hawk all but purred. You keep saying that, but I'm really not. Hawk laughed again, the sound deep and real. You really aren't all that self-aware. Whatever, I muttered. How did you even realize I was gone? I checked on you, he said, running a hand along the back of the settee. I thought you might want company, and it seems stupid for me to stand out in the hall, bored out of my mind with you inside your room, most likely bored out of yours, which obviously you were since you left. What he said caught me off guard. Did you really? His brows lifted. I mean, did you really check on me to ask if I wanted company? Hawk nodded. Why would I lie about that? I didn't know how to explain that not even Victor did that when he was on duty. My guards weren't allowed. As the Duke would see, that was being too familiar, but no one checked on the old wing. Still, Victor stayed outside and I stayed inside, but Hawk was different. He'd shown that from the beginning. I shook my head. It doesn't matter. Hawk was quiet, and when I glanced over at him, I saw that he was closer, leaning against the settee. I hate saying my T's for that word. Not y'all over here yelling at me for hitting my car. Y'all are funny. How did you end up on the ledge? Well, that's kind of a funny story. I imagine it is. So please spare no details. Details? Did I say that right? Yes. He crossed his arms. I sighed. I came to find something to read, and I stopped inside this room. I didn't want to go back to mine yet, and I didn't realize that anything about this room was special. I eyed the liquor cabinet that alone should have been a warning. I was in here, and I heard the Duke outside in the hall. So, hiding on a ledge was a far better option than having him catch me here. And what would have happened if he had? I shrugged once more. He didn't, and that's all that matters. I quickly moved on. He had a meeting here with a guard from the prison. At least, I think that's who it was. They were talking about the dissenter who threw the craven hand. The guard got the man to talk. He said that the dissenter didn't believe that the Dark One was in the city. That's good news. Something about his tone snagged my attention. I glanced at him. You don't believe him? I don't think the Dark One has survived as long as he has by letting his whereabouts be widely known, even by his most fervent supporters. Fervent? Jesus, I struggle so much with F words. Anyway, unfortunately, he had a point. I think the Duke is going to kill the dissenter himself. He tilted his head slightly. Does that bother you? I don't know. I think you do, and you just don't want to say it. It was so freaking irritating how correct he was, and how often. I just don't like the idea of someone dying in a dungeon. Dying by public execution is better. I stared at him. Not exactly, but at least then it's being done in a way that feels like what? I inhaled heavily. At least then it doesn't feel like it's something being hidden. Hawk stared back at me, almost curiously. Interesting. The corners of my lips turned down. What is? You. Me? He nodded and then moved, his hand striking out. Before I even knew what he was doing, he had a hold of the book. Oh, shit. Don't! Unprepared, my fingers slipped over the leather binding, and then it was free from my hand. He had it. Oh, my God, he had the journal, and that was worse than falling to my death. If he saw what it was about... The Diary of Miss Willa Collins. His brows knitted as he turned it over. Why does that name sound so familiar? Give it back. I reached for it, but Hawk danced away. Give it back to me now. I will if you read it for me. I'm sure this has to be more interesting than the history of the kingdom. He opened the book. Maybe he couldn't read. Please let it be that he could not read. The grin slowly slipped from his face. Of course, he could read. Why was life so unfair? His dark brows rose as he flipped through the pages. I knew what was on the first page. Miss Willa Collins had been painfully detailed about the intimate kiss. What interesting reading material. My face was burning with the fire of 1,000 suns, and I wondered how mad Hawk would get if I threw my dagger at his face. Again, the grin returned, and so did the dimple. Penelope. He said my name with so much shock, my eyes would have rolled if I weren't so incredibly mortified. This is just scandalous reading material for the maiden. Shut up. Very naughty, he chided, shaking his head. Annoyance hitting a record high, I lifted my chin. There's nothing wrong with me reading about love. I didn't say there was. Hawk looked at me, but I don't think what she is writing about has anything to do with love. Oh, so you're an expert on this now. More so than you, I imagine. Damn. Damn. I snapped my mouth shut. The truth in that statement stung, and I lashed out. That's right. Your visits to the Red Pearl have been... Okay, please, let's not do this. Your visits to the Red Pearl have been the talk of many servants and ladies in wait, so I suppose you do have a ton of experience. Someone sounds jealous. Jealous? I laughed as I rolled my eyes. As I said before, you have an overinflated sense of importance in my life. He snorted as he returned to skimming through the book. Irritated, I turned to the liquor cabinet. A short glass remained out. Just because you have more experience with what goes on at the Red Pearl doesn't mean I don't know what love is. Have you ever been in love? He asked. I'm jealous too. Openly will I admit that I am jealous of every single person Hawk has ever touched in their life. Every single person. Ugh. Have you ever been in love? He asked. Has one of the Duke's stewards caught your eye? One of the lords? Or perhaps a brave guard? I shook my head. I haven't been in love. Then how would you know? I know my parents loved one another deeply. I toyed with the jeweled top of the decanter. What about you? Have you been in love, Hawk? I hadn't expected an answer, so when he gave me one after a few moments, I was more than surprised. Yes. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Is she dead? She's probably dead. There was an odd twisting motion in my chest that I didn't quite understand as I looked over my shoulder at him, causing me to realize that the aching coldness had eased. I had no idea what it was about him that did that to me. It probably had to do with the fact that he irritated me. Someone from your home? Do you still love her? That was the second question bubbling to the surface, but by the grace of the gods, I managed to refrain from asking that question. She was. Was. This bitch is dead. If I ever see that cheeky motherfucker. He was still looking down at the book. It was a long time ago, though. A long time ago. When you were what? A child? I asked, knowing that he couldn't be more than a handful of years older than I was, despite the way he made it sound as if it were an eternity ago. He chuckled, and then his lips curved up in a small half-smile. The dimple made an appearance in his right cheek, causing the twisting motion inside me to increase. How much of this have you read? That's none of your business. Probably not, but I need to know if you got to this part. He cleared his throat. Wait. Was he going to read from it? No. Please, no. I only read the first chapter, I said in a rush. And you look like you're in the middle of the book, so good. Then this will be fresh and new to you. Let me see. Where was I? He dragged a finger... No, god damn it, no! He dragged a finger over the page and then tapped the center. Ah, yes. Here. Fulton had promised that when he was done with me that I wouldn't be able to walk straight for a day. And he was right. Huh. Impressive. My eyes widened. The things the man did with his tongue and his fingers had only been surpassed by his shockingly large, decadently pulsing, and wickedly throbbing. Hawk chuckled. This woman has a knack for adverbs, doesn't she? You can stop now. Manhood. What? I gasped. That's the end of that sentence, he explained, and when he glanced up, I immediately knew that whatever was about to come out of his mouth was going to burn me alive. Oh, you may not know what she means by manhood. I do believe she's talking about it. Yo, the last time I said this word on live, I got banned. So I'm not gonna say it. But y'all know what he says. About his rooster. Prick. Dick. Oh my gods, I whispered. His apparently extremely large throbbing and pulsing. I get it! I completely understand. Just wanted to make sure. Wouldn't want you to be too embarrassed to ask and think she was referencing his love for her. She was referencing his love for her or something. I hate you. No, you don't. And I'm about to stab you, I warned, in a very violent manner. Concern flickered across his face as he lowered the book. Now that I believe. Give me back the journal. But of course, he offered it, and I snatched it out of his hand, quickly holding it to my chest. All you had to do was ask. What? My mouth dropped open. I have been asking. Sorry. He didn't sound sorry at all. I have selective hearing. You are the worst. You got your words wrong. Striding past me, he patted the top of my head. I lashed out, narrowly missing him. You meant I'm the best. I got my words right. Come. I need to get you back before something other than your own foolishness puts you at risk. He stopped by the door. And don't forget your book. I expect a summary of each chapter tomorrow. He and I were never going to speak about this diary again, but I did bring it with me when I followed him to the door. It was only when he reached for the handle that it struck me. How did you know where I was? Hawk looked over his shoulder at me, a faint smile playing at his lips. I have incredible tracking skills, princess. That little excerpt that I just read has got to be my favorite little part of a chapter I've ever read in an entire book ever. What the fuck was that? What was that? Oh my god. Y'all, and he's just like not real. He's just like not a real person. He done sniffed you out, puppy. Oh my god. I am in love with him. I am in love with him. Oh my god. I hate y'all for making me read this book. Oh my god. I'm about to shit bricks. Oh my god. It was real to me. Oh my god. I think Hawk has got to be one of my favorite. Like, okay. Let me think back to all the fictional men from books that I've ever had a crush on. And let me compare them to Hawk real quick. Let me just do that real quick in my mind. Percy Jackson, that was when I was a child, obviously. Who else? I had a crush on George Weasley. I had a crush on... Shit, now I can't remember any of the books that I've ever read. God. Asriel, for me, doesn't even hold a candle to Hawk right now. Might be because I'm, like, usually whenever I first start reading a book and they introduce the guy, I just, like, hyperfixate on them, and I'm just like, it's them or nothing. It's them or nothing. But for right now, I feel like Hawk has what I was missing in Asriel, because I love Asriel, but he had very subtle humor, and Hawk is just outright, he will just fucking make fun of you, and I love that, and that for me was what Asriel was missing. But Azrael's also very traumatized, so I can't, hold that against him. I love him still, which is why I liked Cassian so much, because Cassian had that humor too. But Jesus, y'all, Hawk, oh my God. Well, there goes my head. How about Cass? Yeah, Cassian. Right now it's like Cassian and Hawk. Hawk is he's just climbing up. Alice, shut up! My God. The brooding and banter gets me. Yes, the brooding and the banter. I can't. He is. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna turn my ring light on because I'm starting to go dark and I'm starting to not be able to see the pages either. So we're gonna. Jesus Christ, it's so bright. And we're only y'all, like, literally, like, we're a little bit over halfway done with this book, and I'm just like, I'm ready to give him my life. I'm ready to just, like, bend the knee and just devote everything to this man. Oh my God. Yeah, they have two different personalities. It's just a personality thing for me. I just resonate with Hawk's personality a lot more than I resonate with, like, Azrael or, like, Cassian's personality. Oh God. Ooh. Woo. All right, let's keep going. I have incredible tracking skills, I muttered under my breath the following afternoon. What? Tawny turned to me, frowning. Nothing. I'm just talking to myself, I said, taking a beautiful, there I go, reading ahead again, taking a deep breath and pushing thoughts of Hawk out of my mind. You look beautiful. And that was true. Tawny's hair was twisted up with a few tight curls framing her face. Her lips matched her mask and gown, a deep and vibrant shade of red. The thin, sleeveless dress hugged her lithe form. She wasn't just beautiful as she walked toward where I stood by the fireplace. She was confident and at ease with her body and herself, and I was in awe of her. Thank you. She straightened the material along her shoulder and then dropped her hand. You look absolutely stunning, Poppy. A flutter erupted in my chest and spread to my belly. Do I? Gods, yes. Have you not looked at yourself yet? I shook my head no. Tawny stared at me. So, you put on the dress, this absolutely beautiful, tailor-made dress, and haven't even looked at yourself? Not only that, you let me do your hair. I could have made it look like a nest for birds. A nervous giggle left me. I really hope you didn't. She shook her head. You are so weird sometimes. I was, admittedly, but it was hard to explain why I hadn't looked at myself yet. It was so rare that I saw myself in anything other than white, and even when I dressed differently to sneak out, I didn't really look at myself, and this was still different because it was allowed. Because someone who knew me would see me. Hawk would see me. No, I have the second book, remember? My mom gave me the first and second book for Christmas. So I'm like locked and loaded, ready to go. As soon as I finish this book, bam, we're on to the second book. I will say that if I was not reading these books to y'all, I would have already been done with the first book. I feel like I would have finished this book in a night or like the span of 2 days. Because I am so invested in this series. That's why I've been going live so much. Because, like, I want to read this book and I want to finish it. So we can buy you the third. No! We've been over this. I do this for y'all because I want to and I like to. You don't need to buy me anything. But, like, yeah, if I wasn't reading these to y'all, I would be done. I would probably be on the second book already. Yeah. These books are good. Like, they're good. Ah, I'm so happy I decided to read these. The flutter turned into large birds of prey that began pecking away at my insides. I was so nervous. Come on. Tawny caught my hand and dragged me into the bathing chamber, where the only mirror was located. She marched me straight to where the nearly full-length mirror was propped against the corner. Look. I almost closed my eyes, as silly as that was, but I looked. I stared at my reflection, not quite sure I recognized myself, and it had nothing to do with the lack of veil and the red domino mask that had been delivered along with my gown. "What do you think?" Tawny asked, her reflection appearing behind me. What did I think? I felt naked. The gown was beautiful, no doubt there. The crimson gossamer sleeves, shaded just enough to hide the scars on my inner arms, were long and flowing, and had a delicate lace edge at the cuffs. The flimsy fabric was opaque at the breast and down to my thighs, the gown skimming my curves and shielding those areas. The skirt was loose. A thicker band of gossamer created the illusion of tears every few inches. But everything else was as translucent as a nightgown. I really should have tried the dress on. It had been hanging in my wardrobe for long enough. I had no idea why I hadn't. Lies. I knew that if I tried it on, I probably would have sent it back. Tawny had talked me into keeping most of my hair down. Only the sides were pulled back from my face, secured by pins. The rest fell to the middle of my back in loose waves. Hawk would see me in this dress. "Maybe I should use my hair as a cloak," I suggested, gathering the strands into 2 sections and pulling it over my shoulders. "Oh my God," Tawny laughed, shooing my hands away. She brushed the heavy waves back. "You can't see anything." "I know, but..." I placed my cool hands against my flushed cheeks. "You've never been allowed to wear anything like this," she finished for me. "I understand. It's okay to be nervous." She stepped back and dug around in the little bag she'd brought with her. "But you look beautiful, Poppy." "Thank you," I murmured, glancing at my reflection. I did feel beautiful in this gown. Anyone would. Tawny returned to my side, a pot in one hand and a slim brush in the other. "Keep your lips parted and hold still." I did as she ordered and held completely still as she painted my lips the same shade as my dress. When she finished, she stepped aside. My lips were bright. I'd never worn paint on my lips or eyes before. Obviously, it wasn't allowed for me. Why? My skin was supposed to be as pure as my heart, or something. I had no idea. Once the Duchess had explained it to me, but I might have zoned out halfway through the conversation. "Perfect," Tawny murmured, placing the pot and brush back into her bag. "You ready?" No, not at all. But I needed to be. The rite would begin at dusk, and the sun was already setting. Pulse pounding, I nodded. Tawny smiled at me, and I think I smiled back. Or at least I hoped I did, as I followed her out into the main chamber. I felt a little dizzy as she reached for the door, opening it. Hawk would be out there, with Victor, and I wanted to turn back and run to where I had no idea. Maybe to the bed, where I could wrap the blanket around me. Victor stood alone. What? What? I looked up and down the hall, expecting to see Hawk, but the corridor was otherwise empty. "You both look lovely," Victor said. It was weird, seeing him in anything but black and without the white mantle of a royal guard. He was dressed for the rite, in a deep crimson, sleeveless tunic and breeches that matched. "Thank you," Tawny said, curling her arm around mine as I murmured the same thing. The corners of his lips turned up as he focused on me. "You sure you're ready, Poppy?" "She is," Tawny answered, patting my arm. "I am," I said, realizing that Victor wouldn't move forward if I didn't say anything. He nodded, and then the 3 of us started down the hall. Was Hawk not working tonight? I figured both of them would be on duty with me, being at the rite. But what if I'd assumed wrong? But he'd said he was curious to see me. Didn't that mean that even if he wasn't on duty, he'd be there? My heart thumped as we walked down the stairs to the 2nd floor. It shouldn't matter if he was here or what he'd said. I wasn't dressed for him. But where was he? I told myself not to ask. I reminded myself over and over, but I blurted it out anyway. "Where's Hawk?" He had to meet with the commander, I believe. "He'll meet us at the rite." Relief swept through me, and on its heels came the almost sweet thrill of anticipation. I exhaled roughly. If my question or reaction appeared odd to Victor, he didn't show it. Tawny, on the other hand, squeezed my arm. I glanced at her. She grinned, as if the mask hadn't covered her eyebrows. I knew one of them would be raised. We made our way to the foyer, and there were many people, commoners and ladies and lords, both fully ascended and those in wait, and staff, all forming a sea of crimson. Cologne and perfumes mixed with the sounds of laughter and conversation. It was a lot to take in as we passed one of the statues. The first thing I did was lock down my gift, fortifying my walls, but my heart was still pounding as we entered the Hall of Banners. The archway of the great hall loomed ahead, brightly lit. Air seemed to leak in and out of my lungs as we then entered the great hall. Gods, there were so many people. Hundreds stood before the raised dais, between the pillars and in the windowed alcoves. Normally I would be on the dais, removed from the throng, but not tonight. It still shocked me that the Duke and Duchess hadn't demanded that I join them, but there simply hadn't been any space. Not when there were at least half a dozen temple clergy on the dais, including Priestess Analia, and just as many royal guards. I looked around, trying to control my breathing. The white and gold banners usually hanging between the windows and behind the dais had been replaced by the deep crimson banners of the right, embossed with the royal crest. Deep red blossoms flowed from urns. I never know how to pronounce that word. Urns? Variations of roses and other similarly hued flowers. Up by the dais there was a break in the color, a splash of white amongst the red. For once it wasn't me who stood out. Dressed in white tunics and gowns, the second sons and daughters stood with their families. Behind them, the parents of the third sons and daughters crowded, their children in their arms. All of them, even the parents, bore wreaths of red roses and twine upon their heads. "If I never see another rose, I will live happily," Tawny commented, following my gaze. "You have no idea how many thorns I had to pull out of my fingers while making those crowns." "They're beautiful, though," I said as Victor scanned the crowd that continued to file in. Most paid us no mind as we walked among them. Only a few did a double take when their gazes passed over us, eyes rounded around their masks as they either recognized Tawny or Victor, knowing that I had to be the one in between them. My cheeks heated, but there were so few of them that noticed. To everyone else, I was just like them. For the most part, I was blending in. I was no one. The pressure eased in my chest as my pulse slowed. Breathing became so much easier, and the mental walls blocking out my gift no longer felt as if they were seconds away from crumbling. I wasn't the maiden right now. I was Poppy. Briefly closing my eyes, muscles strung tight as a bow, relaxed. This was what I'd been looking forward to, when I could just be Poppy. And that made this moment, this night, a little magical. Opening my eyes, I looked up at the dais again, ignoring the far left of the stage where the priestess stood. I spotted the Duchess, speaking with one of the royal guards I recognized. I generally saw him outside the Duke's office. I scanned the dais, but I didn't see the Duke. I wondered where he was when one of the priests joined the Duchess and the royal guard. My gaze dropped to those before the dais, and my excitement dimmed as I thought of the Toulis family. They had to be up there with their son, preparing to say goodbye to yet another child. Tonight would not be a celebration for them. Not maiden. The hairs on the back of my neck rose as I looked over my shoulder, already knowing who I would see. Lord Brendel Mazine. My old friend. That's it? No! Okay, so next time we're going to read chapters 23 through 24, or what? Stop, I'm triggered. How do you think I feel? I'm the one that found him attractive for those 0.4 seconds. And then once I found out that he was not a good person, I just felt like shit. 23 through 26. Okay. 23 through 28? Until 28? What? Okay, hold on. So 23 through 28 or 23 till 28? Through 28 or until 28? Oh, my back hurts. I don't mind reading until 28, especially with knowing that, oh my god, my back hurts. Knowing that Hawk is gonna see Poppy in this sexy ass dress. Okay. You're not gonna want to stop after this? Jesus. Oh, man. God. Okay, so then I will definitely schedule this live for Saturday so we can have lots of time to just sit and read together. Okay, so Saturday around 2 is what I'm thinking, because yeah, if I'm reading that many chapters, I feel like I need to have time to like sit down and read them. So 23 through 28 for sure. Okay, so yeah, then read 29 alone, and then 30 with us. Okay, sounds good. Okay, yep, okay. Oh, sorry, I'm like drinking a lot of water. My throat is like raw. I literally go from screaming not screaming, but like raising my voice with 2-year-olds all day to sitting down and like reading these books with y'all. So my voice is like struggling a little bit. Ooh. Sorry. Okay. So how did you like these chapters? I think we established that I very much love these chapters. And I very much love Hawk, because what the fuck? That man is... The way they... Okay. Okay. You work with kids? Yes, I work at a preschool, and I work with older 2s and young 3s, and then like younger 2s. Sometimes I go like back and forth between rooms. Not a Ricola. But this is just gonna turn into a what we love about Hawk chat real quick, because I genuinely love that man. Okay. I love that he doesn't judge Poppy ever, like, for doing the shit that she does. And he always asks her why she does what she does, and then takes it in and evaluates it, and then comes to a conclusion on his own. Like, and even then, it's like never like, he's never making her feel just like, oh my God. He's just so, stop. I don't even know what to say about him, because I feel like I don't know him that well. It's just the things that I've seen so far are just, How could you not like him? Like, how could someone just read that and not like him? He checks all of my boxes, y'all. He checks all of the boxes. Dark hair, traumatic past, a fucked up sense of humor. He's hot. He is smart. He is dedicated. He is caring and compassionate and non-judgmental. And he believes that women should be able to just like do whatever the hell they want and be held in the same like regards as men. And so he's a feminist, and we love that. A fucking flirt. Oh God, he's just amazing. He can fight. He can, oh God. Oh God. This is the worst thing that could have happened to me. And I blame y'all. Now all I'm going to be thinking about and talking about is this man. God. And like, he just like, oh, I can't. Multifaceted man. Yes. Ugh. And this is why I have been single for so long, because when I look at men in real life, or a man that is asking me for my attention, I compare them to these sons of bitches in the fucking pages. And are they anywhere close to what's written in here? No, they're not. So what do they get? They get the boot. Oh, also, a little update on the fucking bitch of a boy that was using my streaming accounts for his own pleasure and letting other people use them. I officially cut him out. I removed his device from my streaming stuff. You'll have another guy to simp over in a shadow. Okay, see, y'all keep saying Prince Castile. Like, y'all keep saying, like, and I, like, I am genuinely scared for myself when Prince Castile is introduced and when we start getting to know him. Because I know it happens. I know that he gets introduced and I know that we start getting to know him. I am genuinely worried for my mental, I'm genuinely, concerned for my mental health when that starts happening. Because I was really going for the whole, they're the same person, so I wouldn't have to choose. I can't do it. A Shadow in the Ember is the prequel. The guy is in Castile. Who the fuck is he? There's a third? So the second book is a prequel? And it has nothing to do with Castile. Is it the First Maiden? Is the second book about the First Maiden? What? Wait, what? No? I kind of want a book about the First Maiden. No, it's a different series. Oh! Okay. Oh, okay. Same universe, but... Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Gotcha. No, you're good. I just misunderstood. Oh, God. I need to go to Barnes & Noble and buy a really good juicy romance book. Do y'all have any recommendations? Because I finished The Witch's Heart and I thought I had another book to read and I realized that I do not. And to keep myself from reading this, I need a juicy, a good romance book. Do y'all have any suggestions? Oh God, see that's the $1 million question. Do I want to cry my eyes out or do I want to just be... No, I want to cry my eyes out. Give me a good juicy romance that just crushes your soul. Literally beats you down to the ground and with no mercy. It's just fucking... Priest, I already read that and that was the hottest shit I have ever read in my life. That book was so good. I wanted to read It Ends With Us. That book is really good. It'll break you down. Oh my God. Oh, y'all are just going for it. Hold on. Both by Colleen Hoover. The last time I read a Colleen Hoover book, I literally wanted to rip my hair out. That book did so much to me emotionally. All Roads Lead Here. And If You Want to Be Wrecked, It Ends With... I already read It Ends With Us, and it did make me sad. I won't say that it wrecked me, but it did make me very sad. From Lukov with Love. Is it good? Yes, it's really good, but it might be triggering. It triggered me a lot. The Hating Game. I think I've heard of that, actually. The Hating Game, Ugly Love by Colleen. God damn, Colleen Hoover. She just be... The Love... Okay. I have seen The Love Hypothesis everywhere. When I say everywhere, I mean that book is being shoved down my throat. Every other video I see on TikTok is about The Love Hypothesis. And you know what's stopping me from reading it? The cover art. I can't. I hate to be that person, but the cover art is stopping me from reading it. Spanish Love Devotion. The Love Hypothesis, name and cover are dumb. Book is amazing. Just rip the cover off. Have you read Burned by Ellen Hopkins? No, I have not. Y'all are about to make me have a whole list. Hold on. And I literally get paid tomorrow, so I will be at Barnes & Noble first thing when I get off of work. Oh, look. Here's where I wrote down what lives I'm going to do. Spanish Love Deception. Okay. Spanish Love Deception. That one sounds good. I will look that one up. Burned. For that one, I'm going to write the author, Ellen Hopkins. The Hating Game. Damn it, I messed up. Whatever, I know what it means. Ugly Love. I will write The Love Hypothesis. Cannot guarantee that I'll read it. Okay. From Lukov with Love. Okay, I think that's all of them. Okay. Literally, I will go to Barnes & Noble tomorrow and I will look for all of these books and get the ones that I can find. Because I need a good book to read in between what I am currently reading. Because, honestly, y'all, I want to sit down and read this shit tonight. Tonight. The Hating Game. Have you read House of Earth and Blood? Is that a series or is it a standalone? I really want to read standalones, like, to myself and read series with y'all. The Roommates. And when the time comes. I think I have Zodiac Academy. I think someone gave that book to me and I wanted to read it, and then I started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses and I completely forgot about it. You know what book I have that I've been meaning to read and I've just been putting it off because, like, classic literature and I go back and forth because it's either really fucking good, like Pride and Prejudice, or it's really fucking boring. So fucking boring. I swear to God, I saw someone walking towards my car, but no one was walking towards my car. That scared me. Wuthering Heights. That's a book that I've been meaning to read and I just have not been. And y'all, okay, y'all, this is embarrassing as someone who is on book, like, as someone who is, like, a majority of their content is book talk. I don't have a Kindle. I don't have a Kindle. Like, literally, if I don't physically buy the copy of the book, I look it up on Google and I find a PDF for it. I don't have a Kindle. Is Wuthering Heights good? I bought it because I had heard such, like, good reviews about it, but then I just never picked it up and read it. Have you read Heartless? No, I have not. I prefer having the book, honestly. The KU app? You can do Kindle app on your iPad. But I don't know, there's just something about holding the book that I love. I feel like my experiences with I read Silver Flames on my iPad and I just felt like it was so impersonal. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I know it's better to, like, buy Kindles and read on Kindles or, like, your iPad, but I don't know what I like having my book. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think I have a lot of like good recs. I will Spanish Love Deception. That one really caught my attention. That one's at the top of the list, and then we'll go from there. Spanish Love Deception. I don't know. That just sounds like it's gonna be really. Ooh. Oh wait, I saw the Song of Achilles. Where? Who said it? I'm reading Song of Achilles right now, and I'm so scared. Bessie, you should be. That book will tear you up into pieces and spit you back out. That book will literally destroy your will to live and crush you. I'm talking beat you into the ground until you are 6 feet under, and then come back for round 2 and beat you down another 6 feet. That book destroyed me. Destroyed me. But ask me what my favorite book of all time is, and I will tell you that it was that book. Oh my god. That book is so fucking good. I can never say enough good things about that book. God, I love that. Oh, Bessie, you will cry. You will cry. What genre is it? It's like I don't know what genre it would fall under, but it is fiction / Greek mythology retelling. Exactly what I was gonna say. But once y'all get me to talking about that book, I will go on for hours talking about that book. I love that book. God, I want to read it again, but it's just too much pain. Shut the fuck up. I heard that the author of Song of Achilles will release a Persephone and Hades retelling. Shut up! Ah! If there is anyone I trust with my life to do a good retelling, like a good mythology retelling, it is Madeline Miller. Y'all. Yep. Life to do a good retelling, like a good mythology retelling, it is Madeline Miller. Y'all. Yep. I will be. Oh my god. I can feel it about to crush me, so I'm slowly reading down. I'm slowing my reading down. Don't. Rip that shit off like a band-aid. I finished that book at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have videos on my TikTok of me finishing that book, and it was a lot. Have you read A Touch of Darkness? I started it. I have the book. I started it. I did not like it, so I don't think I will be finishing it. I just don't like the modern touch to it, which I know is like a retelling, so obviously it's going to be like different from the OG story, which is like, I'm fine with that. Obviously I read the Song of Achilles, but it wasn't for me. That's what I'll say. It wasn't for me. But I can see why it would be for it. I didn't like the writing. Yeah, I also had a problem. I don't like bashing books because, like, as a writer, I'm like obviously not writing a book or anything, but like I have put work out into the world. So critiquing like other people's books that I know that they put their entire blood, sweat, and tears into, it just feels so wrong for me. But it wasn't for me. That's what I'll say. It just wasn't for me. I've heard mixed reactions to it. That's exactly what I heard about The Witch's Heart, because I heard some really good things about The Witch's Heart, and then I heard some really shitty things about The Witch's Heart. And I honestly didn't hear the shitty things until I was like mostly done with the book. So I finished it strong, but I loved it. It was different. That's for sure. It was a different form of writing that I hadn't read before, the pacing was in some places like almost too fast. Like you kind of feel like you don't have enough time to like build a bond between the characters and like some of the characters in a way. But overall, like I really enjoyed my experience reading that book, and I really enjoyed the way the story was told, and I really liked it. I really liked it. That's why most of my reviews are 4 and 5 stars. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Piper. Sorry y'all missed it. Sorry y'all are just getting here. But we're hanging out. We're chilling. We're talking. Are they recorded? Yes, they're recorded. And I am horrible. And I thought that I was up to date with all of my lives on my Instagram. They're on my Instagram. That's where I post them. I thought I was up to date with all of them. And I was going to start editing down the one from yesterday. And I realized that I was about two or three lives behind, which I'm sorry about. So I will try to do that. What's your @ My @ is, that's a good question. I always forget. I think it's linked in my TikTok bio. If not, I think it's the B. Let me type it out. Let me write it out. The B that, actually, let me write a little bit better. Reads. I think this is my Instagram. It's just the B that reads, but instead of that being spelled out, it's THT. So the B that reads. It didn't work. What? Why is TikTok trying to hold me? Okay, I will reconnect my Instagram to see if that works. Why is my brightness going down? Can y'all still see me? Oh, is my thing dying? Hold on. It's gonna buffer real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, so I think my ring light is dying, which is my cue that I need to go. It's that's the best part. Yeah. Oh yeah, Piper, it was a good live today. Sorry you missed it, babe. But I'll be back Saturday to read fucking like 6 chapters for y'all. So I hope you won't miss that one. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go because I want to eat dinner. So I hope it's the tree. I don't know if it's the tree. But yeah, I will schedule my live for 2 p.m. Central Time. And y'all can join whenever. But yeah. Bye guys. This was fun as always. And I will see y'all Saturday. Bye.